Call of Duty Black Ops 2 has just turned 10 years old, so let's wind the clock back to 2012 and relive the masterpiece that was Black Ops 2 10 years later.
Aside from the fact that I'm still alive, none of this surprises me.
After the explosive success of Call of Duty Black Ops in 2010, Treyarch had their work cut out to produce a sequel, and on May 2nd, 2012, the world was introduced to the future, Call of Duty Black Ops 2. This was our first look at Call of Duty properly going into the future, with an incredibly exciting trailer narrated by a now old man version of Sergeant Frank Woods, describing the futuristic warfare technology being used in the game's story. At this point, this was the first time that Call of Duty had gone into the future rather than the past or modern day. Regardless if fans had any doubts with this futuristic setting, the pre-order rates of the game after the reveal set records 3 times higher than for the pre-orders of Black Ops 1. Further cement this vision of futuristic warfare, Activision also released an official investigative documentary trailer.
I don't think the average American grasps how violent war is about to become.
This immediately immersed us into the world of Black Ops 2, trying to break the boundaries of realism whilst capturing your attention of this futuristic story, also setting the framework for the themes and risks the storyline is going to explore. Fast forward 3 months and we get the multiplayer reveal trailer for Black Ops 2, tying everything we've heard about this futuristic setting but into the multiplayer playground. And it looked absolutely incredible, showcasing bright, vibrant maps, new futuristic equipment, and at the heart of it, showcasing actual gameplay, something we don't normally see nowadays in reveal trailers. The multiplayer trailer also ended with a sneak peek of something which was going to become much bigger for the game's multiplayer. But everything changed on September 26th, a month before the game's release, as we finally got to see our first look at Black Ops 2 Zombies. And this is a moment I will never forget, as I'm a massive Zombies fan. I have been since the very beginning, and waiting to finally see what Zombies was like in this game. The community were at fever pitch with different theories and ideas on what zombies could be like after the ending we got with Moon in Black Ops 1. I was a spotty 16-year-old teenager just beginning to take content creation seriously, was anxiously awaiting to see what Treyarch had up their sleeves. I can't tell you the amount of times I watched this trailer back when this first came out. Oh my god, it was just absolutely insane. Little did we know what would become of this map as an overall experience, but my lord, was this a great way to introduce the zombies world to us, and more so the journey that zombies went on in Black Ops 2 over the course of the year. Roll on to November 12, 2012, Call of Duty Black Ops 2 was out there. Within 24 hours of going on sale, the game grossed over $500 million and set the record as the fastest Call of Duty game grossed $1 billion in revenue in just 15 days. A record which was only recently beaten with Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. Only one thing that I was truly excited for and love still to this day, and that is Black Ops 2 Zombies. It's one hell of a divisive zombies mode, because it started off as probably being one of the weakest zombies Treyarch had ever released at the time, and then it ended with being one of the most incredible. Let's scale it back and start with Transit, which is renowned as one of the worst Treyarch zombies maps that they have ever created. Treyarch clearly were trying to create the most ambitious zombies that they had ever done, finally moving zombies off of a single player engine and moving it onto the multiplayer engine, which allowed them to scale up what they were doing in terms of map sizes as well as player counts, and allowed them to add theater mode into zombies mode as well. Transit was presented to us as more than just a map. This was an experience, something which you could have in many different ways. And we all know how Transit goes, so I don't really need to explain it to you, but upon launch, things were pretty obvious that this map was very, very different to anything that had been created before, and was really tailored as a sort of co-op centered map, presented to you as an open world of sorts. There were 4 or 5 main areas of Transit which you could get to by bus or by foot. No doors were needed to be purchased in order to get there. And these areas were all big enough that they could be their own standalone zombies map. So much so that Treyarch actually did make them standalone survival zombies maps. Transit is the culmination of 10 years after the events of Black Ops 1's Moon, where Earth had been reduced to a hellish wasteland overrun by the undead. Rather than any returning characters, we were introduced to 4 new characters more aimed as survivors: Abigail Misty Brighton, Samuel Stuhlinger, Martin Johnson and Russman. Four strangers who had nothing in common banded together to try and survive this hellish wasteland. It was a bit of a hard sell to sell these brand new characters when we had no context of where they came from, and after the end of Black Ops 1 with the likes of Richtofen, Nikolai, Takeo, and Dempsey, these characters really lacked substance. If anything, it was the map itself that had more of a personality than these characters did on launch. Now, the addition of the bus and the robot driver in transit is nothing short of genius. It is absolutely iconic and one of the main parts of the map's functionality. Originally, this map was so ambitious that it wouldn't have ran properly on the last gen consoles of Xbox 360 and PS3 without there being a load of fog added to the map, as well as this bus system to traverse you around. Truthfully, at the end of the day, transit is a zombies map that just doesn't really work, but I think because we have such nostalgia when it comes to this map and the experiences that we have with friends, I'd still put this up there as a fun experience to have even today. But it's not a fun experience in the sense of traditional zombies because it's just absolute chaos. But I think that's sort of the charm of this map. There are so many things wrong with it. So where do we even begin? The wonder weapon of the map, the jet gun, you need 4 pieces built from several different parts of this map, which require you to run around the map for at least 15 minutes trying to fetch these all. You build it, it's absolutely awful. It breaks once you use it too much, and then you've got to go and pick those parts up again around the map. It's just absolutely the worst wonder weapon truck I've ever created, and I don't know what they were thinking when they created this thing. Truly an absolutely pointless thing that you only ever would do if you were doing the Easter egg. And speaking of Easter egg quest on this map, it is really bizarre how they went from such a beautifully designed Easter egg quest in Moon to what we got with Transit. It was awful. Now, for the Easter eggs, you know how they went with this. They decided to have there as being 2 quests, so alternative quests. One where you side with Richtofen, one where you side with Maxis. I thought that was absolutely fantastic because without them even really thinking about it, they added double the replay value to these maps' Easter egg quests by adding 2 different quests to each map. But the steps themselves and the rewards were absolutely pathetic in Transit. You literally got nothing. You really got nothing. Easter eggs were one of the worst designed ever within this map. There was also the addition of buildables. So of course the jet gun was one of them, but we also had a turbine, which was your sort of portable power system to open secret doors and to use it to power on things if you don't have the power on. And it's a really strong utility tool. But the fact is that you can only carry one thing at a time. Because this is such an essential piece of equipment, you're permanently carrying just this, and there is no reason to carry any of the other buildables, making them all useless. And there were things such as Zombie Shield, which had never been introduced into zombies until now, which is now like a staple, especially in some of the later games like Black Ops 3 and Black Ops 4, but you couldn't carry the shield and the turbine at the same time. There was also a turret which you could only build at the farm, and it was useless because you needed a turbine next to it in order to use it. Same goes for the electric trap, which you could build and it would injure and kill zombies if they ran over it. So it was essentially like the electric traps of old, but you could put it wherever you wanted. In theory, a really cool idea, but because you needed the turbine as well, it was just absolutely pathetic. Let's not even get started on the Pack-a-Punch machine. To this day, it infuriates me how hard it is to get this, because you have to put a turbine down in the power lab and then run all the way to the town, to the bank, hoping that the turbine hadn't been destroyed at that point in order to access the Pack-a-Punch machine. And let's not forget about the denizens, which are these creatures that run in the fog and scratch your face off if you're trying to run through the fog, as a way to sort of sway people away from traveling through the fog, even though you absolutely have to do it. And I'm so glad these things have never returned. They are the things of nightmares. And the Avogadro, it's not the worst zombie type we've had. I feel like in zombies there is a fine line between getting zombie bosses right and getting them wrong, where we've seen in other games like Advanced Warfare where the enemies shoot back at you. Like, I really don't agree with that, and this almost crosses that line, but not quite. You have to go out your way to melee this thing to get rid of it. It's a persistent boss that will always be appearing based on the weather in the sky. It's not terrible, but it's just not great either. But I think design-wise, Transit is one of those very unique looking maps where it doesn't look overly impressive, but I think just because of its dull color palette and just the amount of lava everywhere, it's a very unique environment, one that I've grown to actually really like. But looking at this map 10 years later, it has not aged very well at all, and it plays really bad as a zombies map. But as a fun sort of Call of Duty co-op map to play. It's an almost guarantee you're going to have some laughs with it, but it's going to be really chaotic. But I think the downfall that Black Ops 2 Zombies had from launch was that it was just too ambitious for its own good. We got the transit mode, which failed to deliver the experience that Treyarch wanted due to hardware limitations and just so many bad design decisions. But we also got other modes like Grief, which was a 4v4 multiplayer-esque party mode within Zombies. The objective was to kill off the other team by using meat and other things around the map to try and get the zombies to attack the other players. It was a great concept on paper, but I just don't think it was fully fleshed out enough in Black Ops 2, and we've never seen it return since. But a lot of people would love to see a more refined version of this mode return, and I definitely would like to see it. But I think one of the best decisions Treyarch made with Black Ops 2 Zombies on launch was not having solely just transit as the only experience. They made separate survival mode versions of these areas, so areas like Town and Bus Depot became their own iconic maps within their own right for being fun to survive with very little at your disposal. Zombies definitely launched with a decent level of content, but sadly the content itself just wasn't that great and it hasn't aged well at all. There's no doubt that Treyarch saw the feedback from the fans and were trying their best to create a follow-up Zombies map as DLC 1 that would fix all the problems that Transit had. And here we got our first look at Die Rise back in January, 2 and a bit months after the game had launched, where we were just itching for something new, and it looked promising. The Zombies map was a series of crumbling skyscrapers, which introduced some crazy verticality into zombies, as well as a lot of dangers being so high up. Community expectations were high that Die Rise was going to deliver a much better experience than Transit, but unfortunately it was no better. Some may say even worse than Transit. One thing I'll give Treyarch props for is that they always try to change it up and try something new and different, and Die Rise definitely was one of those maps. There was a massive emphasis on verticality if you wanted to get around this map a lot quicker, and it rewarded players for learning and mastering all the different ways to do that. But the flow of this map is incredibly confusing, more so than Transit, because there are so many different levels to these different buildings that have so much verticality. Treyarch did finally listen to the feedback of the jet gun being the worst wonder weapon ever, and we got a pretty decent one here with the Sliquifier, which is a really sort of goofy wonder weapon that I really like still to this day, and it's incredibly easy to get. You just build it from 3 parts. That's it. You got it forever, and it's in the mystery box after that, so they learned everything wrong with the jet gun. Furthermore, it's incredibly easy to get Pack-a-Punch compared to Transit. You literally just go up to one of the lifts that has the machine in, which is fantastic. From an artistic design, this map is very unique and in some ways can be quite a good looking map. It's certainly an unusual looking zombies map, which Treyarch are known for creating, and I'm glad they kept it up with this one. But some of the things that this map fell flat on was just that the map just didn't flow very well, especially when it got into the higher rounds. The Easter egg quest on this was a little bit more exciting than Transit, but equally falls flat on the design of both just being a little bit odd, and the reward again not being that great. You do get given all perks, but if you go down, you've lost them and that's it. Definitely a much better reward than what we got from Transit's Easter egg. It doesn't feel as good as when we first got them in Black Ops 1's Easter egg, Shangri-La and Moon, for example. This map did introduce some incredible mechanics, which I think are now firm memories and nostalgia for people in Zombies, being the trample steam, which allowed you to jump further, sending zombies across the map to their doom. But it was a really important thing inside of this map for allowing you to traverse back to areas which were inaccessible by foot. I think it was a genius addition by Treyarch because it made for some really unique placements to be able to do things that I bet even they didn't expect players to do. There was also a new perk added in, being Who's Who, which allowed you to revive yourself as you were essentially a ghost that could revive your body, and in solo this thing was absolutely broken. Comparing this perk to Tombstone Soda that was added in Transit, this felt like it had more of a use, especially when it came to solo, but it wasn't one of those essential perks that you had to get, which I feel Treyarch struggled a lot with throughout all of Black Ops 2, adding a really good new crutch perk in. But I feel with this approach to map design, they really tried to change the pace of Zombies, so more so where you're not running around the map like a headless chicken, more so locking down an area of the map, because the areas that you had as playable spaces were very small and some of them even had obstacles. So I think for players that were fairly new to Zombies, navigating this map was very difficult because you could fall to your death very, very quickly. Some of the map design was also a bit maze-like. It was inspired by MC Escher paintings where some things were upside down and not quite the right way. But it'd be interesting to see what this map would be like if they ever remastered it. But does it play well 10 years later? Has it aged well? There isn't much in this map that makes it a standout to play 10 years later. I don't think it's aged particularly well. That was two back-to-back zombie maps that were not received very well. So Treyarch had to hit it with a home run with the next map. And boy, oh boy, did they succeed. After the underwhelming success of the Transit crew in maps Transit and Die Rise, Treyarch decided to take a different approach. Jimmy Zielinski was the main Zombies director directing these experiences, but they decided, whilst working on the next Zombies map, to throw the Zombies bat over to the campaign team, who were now not working on anything. And here brings the introduction of Jason Blundell.
We wanted to take the story somewhere new and change the vibe. We were embracing this idea of horror thriller. So then we went to Alcatraz.
Wow, what a departure this map was to what we had on launch. Mob of the Dead is a celebrity cast centered around a linear story told through gameplay and its Easter egg quest. And it's fair to say, boys, even 10 years later, this map is still an absolute masterpiece. The entire map was built and based off the infamous Alcatraz Island, including the prison and the Golden Gate Bridge, taking the futuristic setting of Black Ops 2 Zombies back to during the Prohibition era of America. Playable characters were all uniquely written for this story, played by celebrity mobsters. From the very beginning, this map creates an atmosphere and feeling that had not been felt until this map's introduction in Black Ops 2. The intricate details, the designs, the colors, the intricate music stingers, entering new areas for the first time, new afterlife game mechanic, the weaponry, it was just a stroke of genius. It immediately has a much different feel to the two Zombies maps before it, but this was the very beginnings for Zombies as we know now, where storyline was first and foremost part of the gameplay experience, where the mobsters who were inmates of Alcatraz were attempting to execute an escape plan during the night of the zombie outbreak by building a plane to fly to the Golden Gate Bridge. This served as the Pack-a-Punch quest of the map and would also be the majority of the main Easter egg for this map, which I would say is the only weak part about this map. And when I say weak, it is by no means anywhere near as bad as the Transit and Die Rise Easter egg quests, because this one's actually very easy and very simple. But I think the fact that it is so simple is what slightly lets this Easter egg quest down. But the final moments where you're given a audio tour around several parts of the map to describe the storyline events, as you would get that in real life getting a tour of Alcatraz, is absolutely incredible. The first time I experienced this gave me goosebumps, seeing that something like this actually could happen inside of Zombies as a way of storytelling. It was magic. Map also introduced a new wonder weapon being the Blundergat, which is a hybrid between a blunderbuss shotgun and a Gatling gun. And it is hella unique and is still probably up there as some people's most iconic wonder weapons that they remember from using. This could be turned into the Acid Gat, which was really good. There was other stuff like a unique tomahawk known as the Hell's Retriever. We also had the Golden Spork, which was a super powerful secret melee weapon. There was just so many layers to this experience beyond what you just had on first layer, which is something that Transit and Die Rise severely lacked. The new boss of the map was Brutus, who has now become synonymous with Call of Duty Zombies, as it's literally been used so many times, and I think it's a great boss, but I feel like its purpose is to annoy the player by locking down simple things like perk machines, workbenches, and the box so that you have to pay to unlock them again. This was at the base of Jason Blundell's boss design, to do stuff that sort of irritates the player and puts their focus off killing the undead for a moment. But I really dislike the fact that if you don't take this thing out, he will run around and disable everything, costing you absolutely loads. And I guess in a way, this was Treyarch looking at how people could use their points in the later rounds as they become pretty useless once you get so many. But I don't know, it's something which I've always just not really enjoyed about that map. That is probably the only thing. Actually, that's not the only thing. In solo, you can pick up all 5 of the fuel cans to fuel the plane, but if you're playing in co-op, you can only carry 1 at a time. It does get very tedious having to do this every time you want to go to the Pack-a-Punch, and I mean extremely tedious. It just felt like so much love had been put into this map to really create such a unique experience. You know, we had full-fledged CGI cutscenes for this map at the beginning, and there's a reason why so many people wanted this map to be remastered, and we eventually got a remake in Black Ops Ops 4, but to me, this is always going to be the better version. And to this day is up there in probably my top 5, if not top 3 best zombies maps ever. There's no doubt that this map completely revitalized Black Ops 2 Zombies as a whole, and so many people were excited and on board for what was going to be coming for the next DLC. And it was over to Jimmy Zielinski again for the finale of the Transit Crew story with Buried, and this map did not disappoint. It took everything they learned from Transit and Die Rise and made a zombies map which was not only pure fun but also had a lot more depth and layers to the map, which we all wanted from Transit and Die Rise. We also got a brand new ray gun with this map, which was the Ray Gun Mark II, which is in my opinion still one of the greatest wonder weapons ever. I absolutely love it. Now let's talk about this map design wise. It's again another very unique map, something which we've come to expect from all of Black Ops 2's maps, but they just went the extra mile with this one with the incredible unique music that they wrote for this map. HUD was changed to match the theming and style of this map, and as a small underground western town, this was perfect play space. It felt like a little bit of a sandbox, but a small enough one that it felt more like zombies. One of the most iconic parts of Buried is Leroy, or his actual name Arthur, which you can use to help you kill the zombies, destroy barricades, and many other secret things that you could do with candy and booze, which was just another layer to the map which Transit and Die Rise did not have. A bunch of buildables returned, such as the trample steam, which was awesome. We also got a few others like the head chopper and the subsurface resonator, which weren't useless unlike the buildables that were added in Transit. But then you got the really cool additions, the new wonder weapon, the paralyzer, which was essentially the jet gun but way more powerful and far better. It cooled down when you weren't using it, didn't destroy in your hands. It was literally a fun weapon to use, as it gave you the benefits of being able to fly a little bit in zombies as well. I don't know if that was always intended by Treyarch, but it's now become a staple part of why people like that wonder weapon so much. And the time bomb, which literally let you sort of save a checkpoint in time, which you could go back to at any point. Easter egg quests on this map were also so much better than Transit and Die Rise. Like, they were really darn good. Like right now, you're seeing one of the standout steps in all of Zombies for me, which is going to round infinity. Like, who would have thought that was possible? But in this step, you have to search dead corpses of the crew you're playing as to try and find a switch. It's pretty simple, but the zombies are infinite health. You can't kill them, and also you can die in this, so you need to be careful. But round infinity, that's really a thing in zombies, especially the final step, sharpshooter. If you love it or hate it, it's still a very clever step to add into zombies and really bound that 4-player co-op experience together in a way where your skills were truly tested. There isn't really much in Buried that I dislike, and even 10 years later, I think this map is incredibly fun to play. You've got a slightly scary element with the witches inside the house, which take your points if you get touched by them. How did I forget also that there was the custom placement of chalk-drawed weapons on the wall where you could draw where they'd go? I feel like Jimmy Zielinski and that Treyarch team had a really rough start, being just so ambitious with Transit, and when they scaled it back, they really got a map correct with Buried. And I'd easily argue out of all of the Black Ops 2 Zombies maps, this one is easily the most accessible, where any type of person can jump in and have fun on Buried, whilst Die Rise and especially Transit were just too complicated for their own good. Easter egg rewards for Buried were very interesting as well, because it was the first time that they'd ever introduced a concept of a super Easter egg, something for completing the Easter eggs on all 3 of the Transit Crew maps. Now, the idea and concept of a super Easter egg was mind-blowing at the time. We actually got rewarded for playing all these maps, going through all the Easter eggs on a certain side, but the actual rewards and endings themselves were a little anticlimactic, but I feel like we'll let Treyarch off, as it was the first time they ever did it, and there were a few cool things within those few minutes of gameplay that became those super Easter egg endings. But there were some unique bonuses where with Maxis, the reward where there would be a blue-eyed zombie, which would be Richthofen, who would give you extra power-up drops for the entirety of that match. The Richthofen reward rewarded you with a permanent fire sale, as well as being able to carry 4 weapons at once. Pretty cool, but at the end of it, a little underwhelming, especially when we didn't know the fate of these characters. 10 years later, has Buried aged well? I would say absolutely. This map is still so much fun to play. This is the easiest but most casual zombies experience you can have in the game, and I think anyone can go and play it, have fun, and experience a lot of what makes this map so quirky and unique. But there was one final zombies map still to release for Black Ops 2, and this map really changed everything. What needs to be said about Origins that hasn't already? This map, 10 years later, is still spoken about by many players to this day as one of the most iconic, the most memorable, the most atmospheric zombies maps that Treyarch has ever created. When it came to Moon with Black Ops 1, they truly knew how to end the zombie season with a bang, and Origins had some big shoes to fill as another final DLC to end zombies for the next year or two with a bang. In my eyes, it's tied with Moon as the greatest final DLC zombies that we've ever received. And I think the level of marketing that this map got just shows not only how confident Treyarch were with this map, but also how confident Activision were with zombies as a whole at this point. Just look at the teaser trailer alone for Origins. It sent shivers down your spine, seeing these characters return in a completely different form, being younger versions of themselves, and seeing this grainy, old black and white footage of a robot stomping across World War I France. It just looked out of this world and something that only Treyarch zombies could get away with. Origins, like Mob of the Dead, is a masterclass in gameplay and storytelling combined, offering a map where its level feels like a living, breathing world. It's incredible to look at the reveal trailer for Black Ops 2 and see where its campaign explores, and then compare it to Origins in World War I France. It is testament to how creative Treyarch were with all of these levels, and Origins really is the culmination of that. The depth within this map was something never seen before in zombies, offering just this incredible storyline explored through a multi-step Easter egg quest tied to the wonder weapons of the map, the Origins staffs, all holding their own incredible power that have now become staples within zombies, offering that 4 elemental wonder weapon feature, and Origins really pioneered it and done it super well. But the one thing that Origins has over most of the other maps in Black Ops 2 is the approach to difficulty. This is without doubt the most difficult zombies map in Black Ops 2, one which, if you are not at all familiar with zombies, you are not going to enjoy this because it is complex as hell. Up until this point, every zombies map has had a simple power switch lever to get the power on, but in this, you have to activate generators around the map. The map took buildables to an entirely different level, where one of the main focuses of the map was the buildables, in fact, to get the Origin staffs, which at first was quite difficult compared to most things we were used to in zombies, but it was a difficulty which I think people have grown to absolutely love, myself included. Origins perfectly encaptures a journey you as the player go on, where at the beginning you feel incredibly weak, like with nothing but a Mauser pistol, and you have to try and open up the map with its pretty expensive doors and very open layout to try and make sense of it all. It's that slow progression of power which I think is why Origins is such a popular map and still plays well to this day. And I think it's because the blueprint for most modern zombies maps were taken from Origins, so it's a concept that people are a lot more used to than they were back in the day. But the level of depth with the Easter eggs and the main quest were something which people were really excited about at the time. If I remember correctly, it took like 2 or 3 days for the Origins Easter egg to be fully completed. Whilst I wouldn't say it is the perfect Easter egg, many would put it up there as one of their favorites, one of the most memorable, for taking you on that journey with the steps being straight out of Vorkuta. And the Origin staffs are just pure awesome. They are very strong. You feel like it was worthy of the struggle and journey to get. And the theming of the map just works amazingly well. I'm actually pretty surprised we've not seen another diesel punk World War I style map. Closest I've say we've ever had to a quirky, unique map with that sort of character is really Shadows of Evil. There's just so many good things packed within this map. You've got the G strikes, you've got the 1-inch punch, which admittedly is a little pointless, and I've always questioned why you needed it right at the end of the Easter egg. I assume Treyarch put it in there for you as something to have as a backup while you're trying to do that final step of getting the souls. It's never really been that useful to me. But then you've got got the Mauser pistol, which Pack-a-Punch is amazing. You've got the MP40 and all these other World War I guns. And aside from the obvious being zombies, we also have the introduction of another boss enemy being the Panzer Soldat, which I would argue is probably one of the most iconic, and I've said that word so many times in this video, but it's true. A very iconic boss, which feels actually quite scary whenever he does appear on the map. Like, you do actually feel a little bit of tension on if you are going to be able to take that thing down or not, depending on what weapons you have. You also have the giant robots that are stomping around all the time, which I think design-wise, it is just so cool that this was all something that could be done on the Xbox 360 and the PS3. It's just such a unique feature. Like, I don't know who on earth thought, yo, let's make a zombies map where we have giant robots stomping around. But overall, this map is just extremely rewarding every time to play. High rounds on this map are really fun, especially when you have the right wonder weapons. The only thing that I feel this map has that is a negative is that every few rounds or so, these Templar zombies spawn and try and destroy a generator before running around the map and destroying all the others, and it's the one thing that breaks the gameplay a little bit for me. I just really don't enjoy those. And again, it's classic Jason Blundell design, adding something like that to sort of break your immersion and take your attention away from the main focus of slaying the undead to having to deal with that. It's the only thing I don't enjoy about this map, and that's not even really a big deal. They're not really hard to take out. But the other thing that's a big part of the map which people might have some struggle with is the mud. Sort of similar to the fog in Transit, this is designed to slow you down and not make you traverse around the map so easily, and it is annoying, which is why Stamina Up is going to be a crutch perk for this map. What else is there to say about Origins that I haven't already said? It was absolutely incredible for the time when it came out in Black Ops 2. It still plays amazingly 10 years later. Depending on what sort of player you are, if you enjoy difficulty, I'd actually say the Black Ops 2 version of Origins is the better version. Even though Black Ops 3 obviously looks way nicer, it does play a little bit better, but it's also a little bit easier as well, especially when you factor in gobblegums, and there's a few other balancing changes that the original Origins didn't quite get right. And that wasn't all that Treyarch added in with Black Ops 2 Zombies, because we also got a brand new game mode, Turned, which was a prototype mode from World at War, where the idea was you would actually be able to play as a zombie. 3 players would be zombies, 1 would be human, and it'd be your job as a zombie to try and take out that human and become human. And the longer you lasted as a human, the more points you got, and whoever had the most points at the end won. This is easily probably the most forgotten side mode in all of Call of Duty Zombies, because it just wasn't very well developed. It's very basic and bland, and I reckon if they took more time to flesh it out, it could have been a funner game mode. I'm glad they tried it, but I really wish that they would bring this back, but really flesh it out to be a lot more expansive, you know what I mean? Grief mode also made it to some of the DLC maps like Mob of the Dead, Buried, and again, just felt like beta versions of game modes that I'd love to see Treyarch flesh out and bring back in a future game. But there was another survival map that was added as a pre-order bonus called Nuketown Zombies, and it was literally Nuketown, but it was zombified and you had zombies. It's a pretty basic survival map, but what I did like about that is the fact that you had randomized perks and the Pack-a-Punch machine dropping out of the sky from meteors, so every game plays ever so slightly different, as you can't predict what you're gonna get. Obviously, Juggernog and Quick Revive are things you want straight off the bat in solo, and you can't always guarantee when that will happen, as well as Pack-a-Punch. You could get to a pretty decent level where your guns are no longer very strong, and the Pack-a-Punch machine still hasn't dropped in yet. There isn't really much else to say about Nuketown Zombies. It's pretty much what it says on the tin. But I did really enjoy the fact that it took place at the same time as Moon, so you hear some of those classic events happening whilst you're playing. Aesthetically, I love what they did with this map, with the tornadoes going on in the background and just the overall destruction. I really like what they did with the design, but it has not aged very well in the 10 years. I personally wouldn't go back and play this map. But overall, what a journey Black Ops 2 Zombies had, where at launch it was a pretty disjointed mode where it didn't really know what it wanted to be, but by the end of it had the biggest glow up ever. The majority of those experiences still play very well even 10 years later. But now let's talk a little bit about the campaign. I'd happily say that Call of Duty Black Ops 1's campaign is the best campaign that we've ever had in Call of Duty. So for Treyarch to follow it up with a campaign even better was going to be a near impossible task, but there was a few things that I think Black Ops 2's did better than Black Ops 1's. First being that the antagonists within Black Ops 1 just didn't really seem all that menacing or scary, Black Ops 2's introduced a new antagonist called Raul Menendez. To this day, I would say Raul Menendez is the greatest villain we've ever had in a Call of Duty game, and no campaign has been able to create something better. The single-player campaign does something very different that no COD has done before, featuring two connected storylines jumping between 1986 to 1989, and then another set during 2025 during the Second Cold War and rare earth trade dispute. Now, upon first playing this campaign, you would be a little confused about how it connects in with Black Ops 1, which is why we have those flashback missions in there, which I think are the greatest parts of Black Ops 2's campaign. It kicks off in 1986, where Alex Mason, who's now retired from active duty, is just living the high life with his now 7-year-old son, David Mason, but he's approached to go back into black operations by Jason Hudson for an assignment in Cuando Cubango. Sergeant Frank Woods from Black Ops 1 has gone missing, and it's up to Mason and Hudson to find Woods. Where they do, they recover him from the Cubango River, and it's revealed that Menendez, the new villain, is responsible for holding Woods captive after murdering all of Woods' team. This begins the hunt for Menendez for Mason, Woods, and Hudson. It also reveals the origins of Menendez's anti-American sentiment, where we learn that Woods accidentally kills his sister Josefina with a grenade. This is easily one of the most memorable moments in the entire Black Ops franchise for me. Just this human emotion and anger from that moment always be remembered as one of these great moments that created this iconic villain in the Black Ops franchise. And it just gets even worse for the story for these characters, where Hudson manipulated Woods into shooting Mason. So all these fan favorite Black Ops characters end up in pretty bad states by the end of the game, depending on what you choose. And these are just super memorable parts of the campaign for me, which all take place in the past. Especially the moment where you unknowingly kill Mason with a sniper. Like, to me, this is up there with Soap's death in MW3 and Ghost's death in the original MW2. Although I think that moment will always be the moment that COD fans will remember the most. This campaign jumps between moments in the 1980s to moments in the future, and I've played this campaign probably about 7 to 8 times now, most recently about 2 years ago. And to me, I feel the missions set in the past were way stronger than the ones in the future, but there are some very iconic missions that I did enjoy. One in particular where you're looking for a specific person in this futuristic tower that has a nightclub going on, where you have Skrillex playing. Like, I still really can't believe that happened in Call of Duty. I feel where this campaign was the weakest, and even 10 years on, it still just doesn't sit right with me, is the strike missions. These are very different in gameplay style to traditional Call of Duty, where you were no longer controlling a main character, but instead controlling a squad of soldiers, drones, mechs, and other pieces of equipment, where you had multiple objectives laid out to you in a large sandbox level. It was definitely a very unique thing that they did here, because it was nothing we've ever seen before, and we still haven't yet. Ultimately, these missions just felt like a chore. The pacing was so much slower than normal campaign missions. It just didn't feel very engaging, but it was an interesting style of gameplay for Call of Duty, which I think they've only ever done for a mobile app, I believe, called Call of Duty Strike Team. So that's one positive that's come out of that. We're kind of going for like a strategy game sort of vibe with it, but it just didn't really work. I love that the campaign had multiple endings. I believe it had like 3 or 4, which is absolutely incredible for a game that came out 10 years ago, and for a Call of Duty game where campaigns don't really ever have that much depth and layer to them. A few other cool innovations, like being able to choose your loadout before you jump into a campaign mission. Regardless of what ending you got from the campaign, I felt they were all really good endings, and I really enjoyed this campaign. Not as good as Black Ops 1, but it's definitely up there as one that holds up well and has some really good gameplay levels even 10 years later. And let's talk about Black Ops 2 multiplayer, and to me, hands down, this is still the best multiplayer experience Call of Duty has ever had. Now, I might be a little bit biased because I'm a Treyarch fanboy, but I just feel Treyarch just do multiplayer better than everyone else. Man, this multiplayer was so fun. It was so balanced. The maps were bright, colorful, beautifully designed. They were all 3-lane maps. They just played so well. There's not really any downsides to the multiplayer in this game. Kill streaks felt amazing. All the guns were really good. Even the DLC maps were great. Like, honestly, I had so much fun playing multiplayer on this game that I never really ever went for, you know, Prestige Master on any game, but I got extremely close to it on Black Ops 2, even though I played zombies 95% of the time. Like, the multiplayer in this game was just really damn good, and there's reasons why people want this to be remastered, and they keep asking for it because it was just so well refined. All the worries that people had about the futuristic design of the multiplayer was completely thrown out the window when they actually got to play it, because it was just overall really fun. What I will say is that not every single multiplayer map is a 10 out of 10. I think mainly the ones I can think of is Turbine. This map was just a little bit too big, and it was such a camping sniper promoted map. This multiplayer is honestly the closest that Call of Duty has ever gotten to having just a perfect multiplayer. And to top it all off, competitive Call of Duty was starting to become quite a big thing at this point, and Treyarch front and center with designing the game around that. Take a look at the first announcement Treyarch made when describing League play.
So the esports initiative. So in the competition and esports initiative, we're doing a lot of things for players. First off, we're going to have a skill-based matchmaking system that we refer to as league play. So that way you and I can play together if we're of equal skill, because the game is fun when competition is at an equal playing field.
Now, if any of you at the time were playing League play, you'll know how awesome this was. This was the introduction of full skill-based matchmaking into a system where there was proper levels. Skill was actually ranked, so you knew when you were coming up against people that were better than you or were worse than you. And what blows my mind is how Treyarch got the first iteration of the system so perfect, and in the modern CODs with like Cold War, Vanguard, and soon Modern Warfare, they are adding a League play-like system again, but it's still not quite the same as how Black Ops 2 done it, where they honestly did it really well. This turned someone who just played multiplayer casually into a full-on competitive-esque player with this mode. Like, it was really dang good, as was all of the multiplayer in Black Ops 2. So overall, 10 years later, has this game aged well? Yes, this game has aged incredibly well. You could still go and play it to this day and you'll have an amazing experience. Although if you're playing it on console, yeah, I don't think it's going to be quite the same, because it's just riddled with hackers and modders, which is a real shame. I wish that Activision and Treyarch had the resources to go back and clean this all up to keep the experience exactly as it was, as we experienced it. But unfortunately, I don't think that's going to be the case anymore. But in terms of zombies and campaign, both aged really well, still play really well, and this is easily one of the best Call of Duty games ever made. With rumors that Black Ops 2024 is going to be set between Cold War and Black Ops 2 with that slightly futuristic twist, as well as having some moments from the 90s, then we could have another banger of a Black Ops on our hand. I really hope you guys enjoyed this walk down memory lane like I did. If you did enjoy it, brought back some memories, some nostalgia, please show some love on this video, drop a thumbs up and subscribe. And thank you to anyone that has been watching this channel for over 10 years. I don't really understand how some of you guys are still here. I am eternally grateful for that, and I hope this video brought back some of those memories.